Team Edwards, please take your seats and silence all cell phones. We will begin by playing 2 brief videos. If you have any questions during the commander's call, please text 707-412-8922.
What is this place? It started as a railroad water stop on a lake that had no water. A big lake, dependably dry, 40 square miles with a surface smooth as glass. Early on, the Army Air Corps saw it as a bombing range, but it took an independent Air Force to tap its true potential. What is this place? For the better part of a century, it's where people have come to test their luck, their spirit, their visions, their machines, and themselves. It's a remarkable place where barriers are broken, frontiers recede, humanity steps forward and upward. If it flies faster, higher, farther, heavier, quieter, stealthier, smarter, deadlier, you can bet it proved itself right here. This is where theories, simulations, hopes, and dreams are confronted with cold, hard reality. This is a place where alliances and partnerships thrive. It is still the frontier. It is still dangerous. That this was once part of the Wild West isn't a point of contention. It's a point of pride. That pioneering spirit lives on in our people and our projects, supported by engineering, refined by technology, informed by experience, and tempered with discipline. We're proud of our history, and we make more of it every day. This is where science and imagination take to the air to be tested so that the United States Air Force can fly, fight, and win. What is this place? This is Edwards Air Force Base.
Contact. Let's do this systematically. You ready? Yellow bag, just come turn around. Okay, let's get back in the fight. Go, go, I'll set the demo. You guys get in the fight. Full smoke. Full smoke.
Team Edwards, please stand for the arrival of the official party.
Take your seats, please. All right. This is going to be a different commander's call that we've ever done. The choice of those two videos was very deliberate. This is not the commander's call where we're going to talk about, we're not going to put up the speeding stats and tell you not to speed. Well, I will tell you not to speed. We've got cameras out there now, so don't speed. We're not going to stand up here and tell you about the combined federal campaign, although Lieutenant Pasternak has a table as you came into the theater and as you're leaving. This is not the commander's call. We're going to tell you all the phenomenal things that our Force Support Squadron is doing to enhance quality of life, although they are. I will say, come out to the club on Friday. I think the kitty's up to over $1,000 now. $1,000 now, and it goes up every week, so we'll see you at the club on Friday night. That's not this commander's call. There are two takeaways that I'd like you to have today. And the first one is what you saw in the first video. You are doing your wartime mission right here, right now, every day here at Edwards Air Force Base. If you want to know what the Air Force that we go to war with, when you walk out this afternoon, look up in the skies. The Air Force that we go to war with is the one that's flying here at Edwards Air Force Base. That's what you are doing. You are doing your wartime mission right now. So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is that this is a fight that's coming to us. And we need to be ready for when the fight starts. And this is not going to be an away game. It's going to be one that's going to come here. Maybe not kinetic, but it's going to come to us in other ways. And so there's a mission assurance piece. So those are the two things that we're going to highlight on. And both of those videos kind of really underpin that. So are we ready for great power competition? Next slide, please. If you want peace, prepare for war. This is an adage that goes back to the Roman Republic. It's actually probably even older than that. Go to the next slide. It's something that underpinned some of the values that we had as a nation from the very first beginning. So President Washington, in his very first address to the Congress, what we now call the State of the Union Address, it's enshrined in the Constitution that you have to do that. The very first one he did, go ahead and build for me. He made a case, it's a very, very short address in January of 1790, and he did it in the Federal Building up in New York City, because that's where the government first sat. And he made a case for a standing army in order to preserve peace. If you want peace, prepare for war. Next slide. And that is what we've been doing for a very long time. So if we look to the last era of great power competition, the Cold War, which we did prevail in, largely because of the work that was done by our predecessors here at Edwards and across test and across material development. The Cold War was won without firing a shot. And I say our predecessors, there's actually a couple of folks here that were actually Cold Warriors here in the 1980s. I won't dime anybody out. In the 1980s, we ultimately won that conflict by investing in technology. It's what we now call the second offset, so specifically stealth, communications, precision navigation, precision weapons, and that was a legacy that we rode on for a long period of time. The 1980s was the period that when we were last kind of at a high in terms of ops tempo, test tempo here at Edwards. We're actually at a historical high now for test. We are modernizing the entire Air Force to be ready for great power competition, and that is the work that you are doing. You're doing your wartime mission right now. Next slide. And so as we look at adapting to the challenge, the changing world in this new era of great power competition that we find ourselves in, and it's characterized by a threat that is rapidly changing. So we did win the Cold War, and it was on great display during Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And the Chinese in particular, well, the People's Liberation Army, not the Chinese people, we'll talk more about that later. They went to school and they studied that victory very, very carefully, and then they went for a very long investment. They have a very long time horizon and started investing in developing capabilities that would counter our capabilities and where we're strong at. And so we are now in an era where that threat has advanced to the point where the environments are contested. Technology is changing very rapidly. There's new emerging technology that is also creating, new domains. That's part of the reason why we say that this fight's coming to us. Think of the cyber domain. And so that is the world that we face are in. And so what are we doing? Next slide. This is a chart from General Alvin's keynote at AFA. If you saw it, he reflected on the Air Force and how the Air Force has adapted to the changing environment over the course of his career. And he characterizes it by 3 different epochs, 2 culminating events, and we are now entering this 4th epoch of great power competition. One to which there is not yet a culminating event that marks the beginning of that epoch like the other ones. So we had the Cold War. We did a lot of work, particularly here on the technology side. We're still flying a lot of that technology. But then that changed when the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union dissolved. And then we entered that period where there was it was the end of history. Fukushima wrote the book, The End of History. There was a unipower moment. Unipower, unipolar, the U.S. was there. And then that changed in the culminating event that was 9/11. That defined a lot of the career that you grew up in. With the deployments, as we are countering violent extremism around the world. But while we were doing that, and I won't say distracted because that was the right thing that we needed to do during the global war on terror, the Chinese were looking to the next thing and investing. So the Chinese, the PLA, right now is the biggest it's ever been and the most modern that it's ever been. At the same time that our Air Force is the smallest and oldest that it's ever been. And there is not yet, you see that question mark up there, there has not yet been a culminating event. And I'm optimistic that there won't be, because of the fact that what we're doing right now. You are doing your wartime mission right now, developing capability. The capability that we're doing is hopefully changing Chairman Xi's calculus. So let's go back a little bit further in history and look at some previous culminating events. Go ahead and next slide for me, please. This is Pearl Harbor 18 months before the surprise attack on December 7th. If only there was something that had told us, that had warned us. that the world is about to change. Go ahead and build for me. Who knows who this is? A subset. All right. So this is Brigadier General William Billy Mitchell, and I recognize that we probably have to do a little bit of explanation. So Billy Mitchell was an early air power advocate, 1920s, passionate about air power. He's the one that demonstrated with Martin B-2, I think is what they were called, not the B-2 that we're flying now, but a 1918 bomber that you could actually sink naval ships. So the German battleship Ostfried-Lind seized from World War I, it was sunk. He was passionate, probably to a fault, about air power. He was ultimately court-martialed for being passionate. He did get posthumously, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his advocacy, because he was not only passionate, but he was prescient about the impact that air power would have on the future of war. He was also prescient about something else. Go ahead and build for me. So in 1924, he published a 525-page document that was eerily prescient about what the Japanese were going to do. He even said Sunday morning at 7:30, and he listed all the targets on Oahu that they were going to attack. The only thing that he got wrong, he said Sunday morning at 7:30. It was actually Sunday morning at 7:48 when the Japanese attacked 18 years after he had written this. He also said they were going to attack the Philippines. He got that. He was off by 10 minutes. Go ahead and build. He told us that this was going to happen, and we didn't listen. Now, maybe if go ahead and build for me. Maybe if Admiral Yamamoto had said, "We're going to attack Pearl Harbor at 7:30. We're going to attack Clark Air Base at 10:30." The Clark Air Base attack was actually at 10:40, so he was off by 10 minutes there. It was detailed. It was eerily accurate. If Admiral Yamamoto had said, "This is what we're going to do," maybe would have paid attention. I don't know. But that was a culminating event. What if Chairman Xi told us what he was going to do? Next slide. If you want peace, prepare for war. Next slide, please. So, the Chinese are investing heavily in the PLA. I've already mentioned the People's Liberation Army is the biggest and most modern that it's ever been. Technologically, they are in many domains on par with our capability, and they are actively resisting the international rules-based order that has kept peace since the end of World War II. Chairman Xi sees the West in long-term decline. He sees the East in ascendancy. He thinks it's only a matter of time. He's okay with a long time horizon. He is absolutely convinced that China is going to be the sole superpower in the world, and it's only a matter of time. There's also, lots of elements of propaganda in that statement that you see up there. For one, the reunification is actually not accurate. There's a somewhat ambiguous history of Taiwan's relationship with China. For the vast majority of Formosa, the island of Formosa, Taiwan, for the vast majority of its history, it has been separate from China. There was a period of time in the 1700s where it kind of fell under the sphere of the Chinese Empire. But then it actually, as part of a peace treaty with Japan, following a war, it actually fell under Japanese rule for half a century. And it wasn't actually until the end of World War II, as part of that peace treaty, that it was, the Japan's claim on Taiwan was given over to the Chinese, and of course then there was the Chinese Civil War. So it's not really a reunification with the motherland. There's really no such thing. Let's call it a forced unification. Words are important. That's also why I call him Chairman Xi. I was fact-checked on that recently, and in one of the local press articles. They explain, he means President Xi. No, I do not mean President Xi. He did not earn president. He is an authoritarian dictator who has complete control over the Chinese Communist Party. The PLA is an arm of the Chinese Communist Party. It's not an arm of the state. It's kind of like if the Secretary of Defense, if the Department of Defense was part of, reported to the, Republican or the Democratic Party in this country. The Chinese Communist Party is the state. The PLA is the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party. He's Chairman Xi. Next slide. So that is the context of where we are. And that is the case for change that the Air Force, pursued. How do we optimize ourselves for this new era that we find ourselves in? Knowing that China sees itself in ascendancy and it's going to be belligerent, what do we do in order to keep the peace? If you want peace, prepare for war. And there's 4 pillars to that, and we won't talk about them all. Our job is very, very heavily on that 4th pillar, the developed capability. That is what we are doing. That's why I say you are doing your wartime mission right now. We will talk very briefly about 2 of the other 3. So next slide. So if you look at how we project power, you may or may not be tracking the Air Force is reorganizing, re-optimizing. We are creating deployable combat wings. We're creating units of action that can pick up and go. Because the way that we have crowdsourced for countering violent extremism in the global war on terror, that's not going to work. Where we are fighting, it's not the professional, major league ball players playing against the T-ball league. These are 2 major league teams meeting in the World Series, and so we're changing how we project power. Next slide. We have also adapted how we've developed capability over the years, and there are also some structural changes that we are making to Air Force Materiel Command. And to understand that, it's worth understanding where we've been. Next slide. So it all starts for us back at McCook Field, 1918, the Engineering Division. So the reason that our MAJCOM is headquartered at Dayton Air Force Base is because Dayton was the Silicon Valley of the early 20th century. We invented the airplane in this country. In fact, the Wright brothers, owned a bicycle shop there in Dayton, Ohio, and that's where they, designed and built over the course of 4 years. And they went out to Kitty Hawk and flew it first, but then they actually came back to Dayton and flew it on Huffman Prairie and did all the development there. So after World War I, where we did not fly a single U.S. designed fighter, all the designs that we flew were foreign designs in combat. Despite the fact that we had invented the airplane, we had lost our technological advantage. And so the Army said, this airplane thing might be important for the future war. So we better get some of that. So McCook Field there, Dayton, Ohio, Chief and I have been there. It's now a softball field. The field is small, use it all. But all of the capability, the technology that helped us prevail in World War II was invented and developed and tested there at McCook Field in the 1920s. Exactly what you're doing right now. That's why you are doing your wartime mission now. It outgrew it. So you can see there in 1925, if you can read there at the bottom, all of the engineering division was 750 employees. AFMC is now pushing 90,000. So we've grown a bit over 100 years. We got too big for McCook, so next slide. We went up the Mad River there, 7 miles up the Mad River to Wright Field, which is established on where Huffman Prairie had been, which Huffman Prairie was a cow pasture out at the end of the trolley stop, and that's where the Wright brothers did their early development. This is the 1904 flyer being tested out there at Huffman Prairie. Go ahead and build for me. That's where Lieutenant Hap Arnold learned to fly, from the Wright brothers on Huffman Prairie. Lieutenant Hap Arnold he'll come back into our story because when Lieutenant Colonel Hap Arnold was the commander down at March in 1933, he established the very first outpost here on Rogers Dry Lake Bed. And eventually what became Edwards Air Force Base was originally established by Lieutenant Colonel Hap Arnold. Next slide. So this is Wright Field, right at the end of World War II. And go ahead and build for me. And so you can trace our lineage of Air Force Material Command from that engineering division to the material division. Over time, there have been, we've separated out kind of the technology development piece, particularly during the 1950s, where, technology was, so now this is where, jet engines were coming, and we were doing high-speed flight, and we were doing, rockets, and the first offset, and all that technology. So we had a separate, development command on the technology side, and a separate, kind of logistics and sustainment piece, and procurement on the other side. That all changed in 1992 when then Systems Command and Logistics Command were merged together. So that was the last kind of MAJCOM reorganization that was part of the Cold War dividend. Think TAC, SAC, and MAC for those that were, again, I won't look at you and dime you out, who was around in those days, but, TAC, SAC, and MAC reorganized. Yeah, some folks are volunteering. Merged to create ACC and AMC, and then finally in 1992 was when Air Force Material Command was created by the wholesale liquidation of two commands and the establishment of a brand new MAJCOM. Next slide. We did go under one more reorganization in 2013. For those that have been around for a while, you may remember when we had on the order of 20 different centers. So in 2013, we went through the 5-center reorg. And if you're counting how many centers are up there after the post 5-center reorg, go count 6. So we're good at engineering, but maybe not good at counting. The installation, IMFC, Air Force IMFC, came about later when we realized that our installations were also war-fighting systems in and of themselves, and we needed to treat them as such. And that's going to become very important as we talk about how do we do mission assurance in an era of great power competition where our CONUS installations come under attack. So there's an addition as part of great power competition. Next summer, we are expecting to further restructure AFMC. So we currently have the LCMC, the Life Cycle Management Center. That is going to bifurcate into the Air Dominant System Center and the Information Dominant System Center. And then the Nuke Warfare Center is going to be upgraded to a 3-star command, be the Nuke Systems Center. And there's integrating PEO responsibilities, and then the AFMC 4-star commander has a new integrating PEO responsibility as well. In addition, we are standing up within AFMC, and we already have it in provisional status. It was stood up at the same time that the new MAJCOM was stood up. Air Force MAJCOM was stood up in provisional status. We have the Integrated Development Office that reports directly to the 4-star and helps integrate across all the platforms and all the other systems. They work hand in hand with the Integrated Capabilities Command, a new MAJCOM, expected to be a 3-star MAJCOM that stands up next summer. We're expecting probably February timeframe for congressional action because that does require congressional approval. And then there's also going to be the Integrated Capabilities Office that reports directly to the Secretary and takes over some of the operational imperative work that have been doing. And so there's a new deliberate approach to force design to deliberately create the Air Force that we need to prevail in this new era of great competition. And then a relook at how Air Force Material Command delivers capability to the warfighter. In the past, we could get away with developing platforms that had capability by themselves and were wholly, self-contained systems by themselves that did everything that they needed to do. The fact of the new systems, it's not just a system, it's not just a platform, it is a capability across a suite of systems. So we're talking systems of systems, and those have to be integrated. And so there's a new role for the test center as an integrating center that you're going to be a part of. Next slide. And so, what we're doing and how we're doing doesn't really change. How we're doing is going to change. We're bringing some new capability. But you are doing your yeoman's work right now. You're doing your wartime duty, your wartime mission right now, delivering capability. And the operational imperatives are still there, and we're still hard at work on them. We touch every single one of those. You touch every single one of those. Next slide. And so, as an example, of new capability and new ways of testing things that we're doing is the joint simulation environment that was created and is now manifested in the digital test and training range. And our EWG, All Electronic Warfare Group, runs the digital test and training range, hosts it here at Edwards, and hosts another enclave at Nellis Air Force Base. And this is an example of how the face of test is changing. So F-35, IOT&E, there was no way that we were going to be able to accomplish the type of test and evaluation of the F-35 system of systems in the open air environment the way that we traditionally have done. So we invested a lot in the infrastructure. And this is going to give us the capability of actually, as there's new ideas, new capability, that we can plug it into the joint simulation environment. We can fly it on a digital test range and see what it brings to the fight, and then integrate things much earlier. And then the operational testers and the 3-1 developers over on the CAF side can use their instantiation of the DTTR Nellis and actually start to develop the tactics, techniques, and procedures that we need to prevail in this new era of great competition. So that's an example of the infrastructure and the investment that we're making. Next slide. That's just one example. Across the entire test ecosystem, we are doing things to accelerate capability of the warfighter. That is your wartime mission, and you're doing it right now. Next. So that's how we develop capabilities. That's where the Air Force is headed. Generate readiness is another one of the pillars. How we have generated readiness has changed over the years. During the Cold War, we did one thing. We practiced, the commies were going to roll through the Fulda Gap. And so we had to, regenerate and get there and turn back the Red Horde that was coming across Eastern Europe. And so we practiced that in a way. And then during this era of global war on terror, we generated readiness in a different way. So there's a recognition that in an era of great power competition, how we generate readiness is going to have to change. Now, and the Air Force is doing that. Now, it's also up to us. We have a responsibility to define what does readiness mean for AFMC. 4/5 of our workforce here doesn't wear the uniform. Readiness is still your responsibility, though, and it probably comes around to mission assurance. When the war starts, the Chinese are going to cut out all lights, probably. They're going to mess with our communication systems. How are you going to keep doing your incredibly important wartime mission that's just going to be more important when the war starts? So there is a mission assurance piece that I need you to figure out. There's also an individual preparedness that I need you to think about. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me, please. If you want to induce insomnia, then read about Volt Typhoon right before you go to bed. Maybe do it in the morning over the cup of coffee just to kind of understand the threat. So Volt Typhoon is the Chinese cyber group that is everywhere. They're in our SCADA systems, the SCADA systems that control our electrical grid. We know that water, infrastructure, communications, transportation, it's all going to come under attack. CONUS is not going to be in installation. We fought all of our wars as away games. We've had that benefit and advantage. That's not going to be the case when this next war starts. And because he's passionate about it, go to the next slide for me, please. Because he's passionate about it and believes in it, and he inspires me and motivates me every single day, I have asked my partner in command, Chief Stoltzfus, to talk about how we are going to generate readiness in a charge to Edwards, Team Edwards. Chief Stoltz.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Is this thing on? All right, good to go. Yeah, make sure you turn it off when I'm done talking, though. All right. Hey, first off, I'm like a little pit bull over there, man, just waiting to be left off the chain. But I will tell you, the boss puts countless hours into these briefings so you guys can be educated on what's coming our way and things that you need to know. So one more round of applause for his brief, man. Awesome brief. Awesome brief. So, all right, can I get the next slide real quick? So readiness. Just like the boss wasn't going to talk about speeding, right? He wasn't going to talk about AFA. I'm not going to get up here and talk about standards. You know why? Because our leaders have been talking about it for countless hours. Because standards are a direct correlation to readiness. But I'm here to put a positive spin on it today and talk about how our teammates are getting after readiness. Who enjoyed the EOD video that they saw when they first came in here? So I grew up in CE, as some of you guys know, and I always looked up to EOD because they're out there on the front lines getting after it, doing the things that a lot of us support. But I will tell you, the pictures you see up here was an operation in FTX called Obsidian Dragon. Who in here was part of Obsidian Dragon? Raise your hand. All right, most of the EOD guys, a bunch of our defenders that might not be here today. And why do I bring up Obsidian Dragon when I'm talking about readiness? I want to hit on one of the points that I've been talking about for the last couple months, Mission Command, and how that tied into Obsidian Dragon. Sergeant Johnson, please stand up. How long have you been in the United States Air Force?
8 years.
What's your rank? Who set up Obsidian Dragon? That's right. Have a seat. Yeah. I will tell you, in my position, I've been getting briefs and briefs and briefs from the time I was a shirt, probably since 2013. And Sergeant Johnson's OpCon brief that I got, that staff sergeant in the United States Air Force gave to me and the boss, was the best OpCon brief I had gotten in my military career. Yes, dude, yes. Are we getting after readiness? You're damn right we're getting after readiness. And this is a great example of it. This young man did not need my permission to go out and get ready. He took an opportunity and did a joint FTX with the Army, Marines, and several other Air Force bases because he saw a need for it. He brought it up to his leadership. They gave him the go-ahead, and he ran with it. And I'm telling you, the benefits that Team Edwards and the Marines and the Joint Service and Beale Air Force Base and a number of other Air Force bases got out of that exercise, I don't know if we can even measure that. But it was because of a staff sergeant's efforts and his team. Whose permission do you need to lead? Nobody's. It's inherent to what you do each and every day in defense of our nation. We need more Sergeant Johnsons, and I know they're out here in this crowd. The boss is going to go through a couple clips at the end on one of his last slides because we are getting after readiness here. FSS is getting after readiness with their quarterly trainings, right? LRS is getting after it. Maintenance is getting after it every day, even quarterly with their load comps. The medics, if you haven't been out to one of their exercises, call Sergeant Ramirez and go out there and be part of that, right? But part of readiness, and I'm going to throw the boss off here a little bit, is about being inspired, right? Just like Sergeant Johnson's story. Can I get Caitlin Moore and Senior Sipos to stand up real quick? These are our two female single-parent Chief Master Sergeant selects for 2024. Please have a seat. Why did I bring up the fact that they're single parents? Because it's hard. Many of us don't know the challenges that they go through. Tanya, are you ready? You're damn right you are. Caitlin, are you ready? You're damn right you are. We all face challenges. But look to your left and your right. That's who helps us get through them. Okay, I see a bunch of faces out there, right? Those are your teammates. And we are going to face challenges in the future. And are we going to be ready? Are you ready today? Yes. Cool. I believe a lot of us are. If you're struggling with something and you need help to get ready, reach out to somebody. Don't suffer in silence. There's another part about readiness that I like to touch on. It's called personal readiness. Because I would also offer, if you're not ready, if your affairs aren't in order, if you're not taking care of yourself, how the hell are you going to take care of the teammate to your right and your left? it makes it that much harder. Take care of yourself. The Air Force that I came in, and a lot of these seasoned individuals in the crowd, didn't often have the amenities and the resources that we have today. Don't take that for granted. Get your personal affairs in order. Make sure you're ready when our nation is called upon. And I will tell you, I've heard a couple different things over the last couple months. We're not war fighters. We are war fighters. We're testers. We're this. We're all of that. Yes. We are all of that. Yes. And we are our nation's deterrence. The boss made comment to it earlier. If you want to see the future Air Force that is going to defeat China and deter China, it's out on our flight line. And each and every one of you individuals has a play in it. From FSS admin to the people individuals at the gym. Mr. Garrett, that's right. Mr. Axel. Oh, yeah, you're right. You got to call out because you're a warfighter, Hole. Right? Yeah. I like it. Talk about inspiration. Mr. Axel, a previous Marine, comes to us from Fort Irwin, comes up here, right, and gets around the Air Force individuals and is inspired because of each and every one of you's efforts each and every day. He's a teammate of ours, and he's a valuable teammate, and what he brings to the fight, I really appreciate that. I don't mean to embarrass you there, sir, but I appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, got it. But when it comes to readiness, what I want you to also think about is, to the boss's point earlier, are we doing the ordinary extraordinarily well? What do I mean by ordinary? There's certain things that we know as airmen, and when I say airmen, I mean big A airmen, I mean total force airmen. I don't care what cloth you're wearing. You're in this room, you're part of my team. Are we doing ordinary extraordinarily well? I do want to talk about standards for 2 seconds. Standards have a direct correlation to mission failure or success. I'm a strong believer in that. What standard am I talking about? I'll let that up to you to decide. If you look to your teammate to your right and your left, and they're missing the mark, I would offer that part of readiness is you helping them get there. You owe it to them. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your team. If we can't get those basic building blocks right, we're going to have a real hard time getting the other things right. Because you can't put walls up on a foundation that's fractured. So make sure we're fixing the foundation first. Putting the walls up, and we'll slap the roof on this son of a gun, and we'll get after it. I'm going to talk about one other thing real quick. The elephant in the room. Who has not heard about the CRE-CRI? So if you're not awake, wake up. Get your hands off your chin. Get your pens out. Because I'm about to give you all the... I'm not going to do it, Miss Kim. I'm not going to do it. Right? I'm not going to give you all the answers, but here's what I will tell you. That from 2 to 6 December, preparation is going to have an opportunity to meet the exercise. And when preparation and opportunity meet, and you're prepared and the opportunity arises, we will succeed, I promise you. Take care of the ordinary things that you do each and every day. Recall rosters. The boss touched on a bunch of it earlier, right? The simplistic things, get those right. And if they're not, fix them. And ask the questions, right? We don't want this to be harder than it is. But we want to make sure that when the balloon does go up, it isn't the first time we're preparing for it. Will there be some rub? Yes. But what is one of my major sticking points that I care a lot about? It begins with an A and ends with an attitude. That didn't work out real well. Attitude. Who controls your attitude? I would offer that you do. And I would offer it's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So attitude equals achievement equals altitude. Pick a good one because it matters to your teammates. The other things you can control is working together as a team. And if you have the right attitude, it's inevitable that that team cohesion will happen, and that's what we need in the coming weeks, in the coming years, to ensure that we are ready when called upon to defend our nation. Thank you, guys. Hul.
Thank you, Chief. Next slide. Chief Stoltzfus is exactly right. It doesn't matter if you're wearing the uniform or not. You also need to prepare for war. And we're going to test that. We're going to challenge ourselves. That combat readiness exercise that we're doing the first week of December is going to challenge everybody across Edwards Air Force Base. It's not going to be easy. But I'd sure rather find out that it's not easy right now so we can prepare for when it actually really counts. And that's what we're going to do. All right, next slide. So this has kind of been a somber tone. We're going to pick it back up. If you want some reading on this, this is not a bad book. This is two academics. Both are with the American Enterprise Institute. Lays out a lot of the scenarios for how we end up with a war. But war is not necessarily inevitable. Go ahead and build for me. Here's another book. Kevin Rudd was foreign minister, so he's Australian. He was foreign minister to China. He is a fluent Chinese speaker. He spent a lot of time living in China. He understands China very well. He was then the Prime Minister of Australia about 12 years ago, and he is currently the ambassador to the United States. He also understands the United States very well. So this is the book. He certainly does not see war as inevitable. He sees war as avoidable. But it is certainly a very, very real threat. And that's why you are doing your mission right now. We are actively working to change Chairman Xi's calculus so that he doesn't start World War III. Next slide, please. And it's also very, very important. I want to make a distinction. We do not have a conflict with the Chinese people or the Chinese nation. China is an old 6,000-year-old civilization with a very, very rich cultural legacy and history, and there's no reason they cannot be working members of a single prosperous global ecosystem. We can get along together. Our conflict is with the Chinese Communist Party. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me, please. It is not with the Chinese people. And by the Chinese Communist Party, it's really now Chairman Xi. Chairman Xi has changed the Constitution so he is no longer limited to a 10-year term. He has systematically eliminated all his political adversaries. His father lived to a very, very long time, so we're potentially looking at another 20 to 30 years of Chairman Xi being the single authoritarian source of what China goes. So this is specifically what we're doing right now is we are trying to change one person's calculus. One person kind of holds the balance of the world in their hands and what they decide to do. But our conflict is not with the Chinese people. Next slide. Next slide. Or go ahead and build. This will start building. So this is what we're doing. This is what you are doing. Chief Stoltz and I spent a lot of time yesterday going through all these photos, and I hope everybody sees their self somewhere in this role. The B-21 is something that is specifically designed to change Chairman Xi's calculus about starting World War III. You all have a part of that. If you are a financial manager, a comptroller, civil engineer, a defender at the gate, if you work at the CDC, if you work at the club, if you're a personnelist, if you work in the tower, if you're a maintainer. I knew that would get that's always a guaranteed crowd pleaser. If you're a maintainer, if you're an engineer, if you're a range technician, if you're a test pilot, every single one of you is contributing to the B-21. You all have a part of this. And not just the B-21, all the other capability that you see up there as well. You are doing your wartime mission right now. We want peace. We are preparing for war, both from doing our mission right now and from doing the mission assurance readiness piece that we have to do. That's just a beautiful, beautiful airplane. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me. And I'm going to look right in the camera here. And I hope Chairman Shi, he doesn't speak English, but he's got people that translate. And so I want him to know that the men and women of Edwards Air Force Base are doing their wartime mission right now. They are accelerating test. They are delivering integrated capability to the warfighter. Today is not the day to start World War III because we have this. Tomorrow is not the day to start World War III. Thank you for what you're doing. All right. For once, we actually left enough time for questions, Chief. I'm proud of this. There is a, right behind Chief's shadow, there's a QR code. No, come this way, Chief. So you can either text it the line, or if you can snap the QR code and send your questions in, and we're happy to answer your questions. We have our staff standing by.
There's a stack of them here, boss. You want a couple of these? Okay.
All right. So first question in the deck. You say our mission is important to the Air Force. What's the Air Force doing to improve quality of life at Edwards?
Well.
The Chief, that one's for you.
Okay. So I'm not going to talk about the apartments. I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff. What I'm going to talk about is some of the initiatives our airmen are getting after. And what I mean by big airmen, quality of life could be as small as putting in, what's that new game you play? Not tennis, but pickleball. Is the chaplain, is he here? Is our chaplain here? Over by the med group, if you don't know where the med group's at, look it up on a map. There is what used to be a tennis court is now turned into a pickleball court. Why do I bring that up when we talk about quality of life? Because it's us taking care of us. We are remote and isolated, and we don't have a ton of money, and we don't have a ton of manpower. But it was important enough to somebody to go out and do, and the chaplain and a couple of his teammates went out there and set up a pickleball court where people can spend time together, exercise, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. That's what quality of life means to me. It doesn't have to be a fancy new building with a bunch of big TVs on it, because the flashy things come and go. But when you put effort into something like that, and others put effort into it, it means more to you. Me and the boss were over there visiting the med group, and we heard some music playing, and I was like, what's going on? And the boss was like, let's go check it out. 4 of our airmen teammates were out there playing pickleball together because somebody took the time and cared enough to make a positive impact on quality of life. So what are we doing to improve quality of life for Edwards Air Force Base? I would offer that our young teammates got some great ideas. So listen, to understand, and help them work through some of those and make it better for us, right? Hopefully that makes sense. What else are we doing here? I will tell you that if you go to the gym, there's new gym equipment in there, right? And if you're not a gym goer, right, what other things are going on here at Edwards Air Force Base? How about First Fridays? All right. Oh, I will tell you that is probably the biggest change in quality of life I've seen since I've been here.
And not just First Fridays.
Well,
it's pretty much every Friday at the club now is
Friday, right? New furniture, the weather's gorgeous. Come out and enjoy our club. What are we doing for the future? I will tell you that I've said this a couple times now, and we're getting closer and closer, is getting some transportation for our young dorm teammates to get around base. I did not know how many young individuals live in the dorms and don't have a driver's license or a car. Because when I turned 16, I think it was before I turned 16, my dad tried to have me down there to get a license, right? But that's not what's happening. And our teammates need to be able to get around on base and get on and off base. Where's Airman Covarrubias? Is he here today? He's in the clinic working? Okay. Airman Covarrubias is another great example of you don't need my permission to lead. He came to me, locked arms with some of our first sergeants, and we stood up AADD. Who knows what AADD is? Airmen Against Drunk Driving, right? This is our teammates making our life here on Edwards Air Force Base better. This is what we're doing for our team. It may not be brand new restaurants. It may not be that because maybe the funding's not there yet. But another initiative we're working on is called RICI, Remote and Isolated CONUS Installations. And there's 11 of them now. And I got an email not too long ago that said, Edwards is now part of this. Right? Edwards is now on the list.
If not the exemplar of remote and isolated CONUS
It's
installation.
not the exemplar. And with that, we're trying to push language into the NDAA. And if you know anything about the National Defense Authorization Act, once language gets put in there, guess what comes with that? Money. Some scratch. Or money for you younger individuals that don't know what scratch is. Right? So we're working towards those kind of initiatives. But my point is, and not to belabor this question, I'm trying to buy some time here, boss.
We got plenty of questions
All
here.
right. If you want to see a change, be part of that change. Be the change you want to see. There's some simple things out there we can come together, put money towards, and make it better for us. That's my answer. Thanks.
Yes. All right, you can start thinking about that one. The
You're getting
that
hard.
was an
This
easy
is
one.
level 6.
And actually, so this next question is, you said we need more people to meet the demand for test, and that is true. So at the commander's call a year ago, we had just completed our test wing PMR. We told you we needed 2,000 more people for the work that we had signed up to already. We are at a historical high for test demand right now. We have never been busier than we are right now. As the Air Force is modernizing every weapon system, that means everything's going through test. So a year ago, we needed 2,000 more people just to meet the demand for what we had PID-SOC'd already through 27. We've hired 1,000 in the last year. Doc Waters and the test engineering group has done a lot of job with the hiring fairs. And the quality of life, all the things that Chief mentioned, is actually part of that's one of the reasons, that's the reason why quality of life is our #1 priority as a test wing, is because it reinforces one of our strategic lines of efforts of recruiting, training, developing, and retaining the people that we need. Because if we don't lose people, then we don't have to recruit as many. We're still going to need 1,000 people, but we also can't afford to lose the people that we do have. So that's what we're doing to meet the demand for future tests. All right, why don't you take the CDC one?
I'll
give you all the easy ones.
Give me that one.
All right.
That was tough. All right, so are there any plans to
this is a good
address the
one.
CDC staffing shortage? I want to phone a friend here, so I will. Mr. Chatfield, can you? I got it. Yes, it's on the Christmas list. So, just to let everybody know, our FSS team, Mr. Chatfield and his teammates over there are working extremely hard to provide child care for our families and our teammates out there. They have selected 7 new employees and are actively hiring more. If you don't know, it's kind of hard to hire the right people out here at Edwards Air Force Base with the tyranny of distance like we have. So my hat's off to the FSS team for not allowing the barriers that would probably stop most of us to stop you from providing us with the child care that we need. And I know it's difficult. I've been in the conversations, not just here, but at our previous base. Mr. Chatfield and I were at LA, and we faced the same challenges there. I would offer this as well. If there's best practices out there, right? We have a lot of guidelines at the CDC, but we want to hear from you, right? I want to hear from you. Hey, why aren't we doing this? Hey, why aren't we doing this? Please share your insights with me. we are working very, very, very hard, and it's a very, very, very delicate situation when it comes to hiring the right individuals to take care of our children. So, hats off to Tony and his team. They are onboarding 7 individuals, and they're working tirelessly to get the right individuals in there. What are we at right now for capacity?
Capacity is right around 295-ish.
Okay.
Current enrollment's about 220.
295-ish. Current enrollment is about 220. So we're working in the direction to hire more to make that available to our teammates.
Thanks, Chief.
Hopefully that answered the question.
All right, so in the 3-4 minutes that we have remaining here, we'll rapid fire through these. We will answer all questions. So the QR code, the text line, 707-412 test wing CC. That will remain active, and if we don't get your question answered here, we will get it answered through the tower or some other way. So rapid fire through these. And I've got 2 here that I'll definitely get through. Will the wing ever push an all test wing intel brief on local threats? Love it. Great question. We talked about Volt Typhoon, right? It is worth staying abreast of what's going on. Our PA team and XP team and our intel team have started the weekly bogey dope that provides just an open source kind of assessment of things that are going on in the world. So look to your inboxes for the bogey dope and other things. And then for squadron commanders and supervisors, intel teams can also come and do intel briefs for any commander's calls that you have, and we can do that at multiple different levels. All right, question for the CRE: how do we actually practice and learn why we refuse to impact operations? I love this question. So there's all the squadron commanders have been told what the intent for the CRE is. I want that week to be painful. I mean, it's going to naturally be painful. War is actually going to be really, really painful. And so we'd rather, have some blood, sweat, and tears, or maybe not blood, sweat and tears, in peace, and figure it out. So what we're going to do, we don't want to impact test operations. So during that first week of December, expect that there's going to be delays in things. Expect that there's going to be potentially power outages, communication failures. Things are going to happen that are going to make it very, very hard for you to do your job, and you're going to have to find workarounds to do that. That's going to take a little bit of extra time. Commanders and supervisors also have the ability to realize and to say, once the learning objectives have been met, and once we realize that, you know what, we're going to have to cancel this mission, mark it down as a lesson learned, the wing inspection team's going to be there, capture that, hey, guess what, we don't have the capability to do this when the lights are out. And then we'll go back and realize that, hey, actually, we need to be able to keep doing function X when the lights are out. How are we going to do that? And that's something that we'll have to go back and figure out. But once we've learned the lesson, we can terminate that local thing and move on and do what we need to do so that we don't actually have an impact. So every single person is going to have to kind of figure this out for yourself of when you've suffered enough that you say, okay, now I need to move on. It's important to do this. But you're going to need extra time. This may not be the time, to plan to, go downtown for lunch. Not that I don't think anybody does that here anyway. Bring some extra food, bring some water. Be prepared, that individual preparedness. Chief, do you have another one? Another quick fire one? And I think this may be the last one.
You said we need more people to meet the demand for test.
That's the one I just answered.
Oh, it is? No, I don't have any more.
Oh.
That's it?
All right. Well, so again, if you didn't get your question answered, or you have questions that come to you, or you have ideas even, this commander hotline is always monitored, and we'll certainly get to your response. So I just one more time want to thank you for what you're doing. We do want peace. We are prepared for war. Thank you.